Zum Sanje Tam Jeje Mo, Rugan Jingora Jansu Chakda, Kaden Zumba Manjiba, Jedun Bango Lama Dambe, Shabje Dorjuma Mebala, Gora de Kubeja, and the Yen Jabzun Jio, Dobzu Jembe, Tudam Jedor Jizo Zondo, Namda Zujim Serje Saje Din, Dingzin Bamir Lango Benze. Yuram Yede Name Jubenzal, Dumjo Dengun Rola Janzelo. Rugam Jese Zume Barjimbo, Zambo Jube Juje Yanguendam, Jarve Abda Jorjan Jazeto, Mavasinge Jimelo Juto. Pardindo Jinjama Ragun Jabda Lama Garma Ba, Jingor Gunje June, Zigi Banjo, Dandurje Nanjurma, Tele Gunje Seko Chujum Benji. Chandra Namjur Jendu Dondra Nidu Jijunzo Yude Sanje Bundan Yamnayam Kare Sanje Lejan Lope Pangona Mezola Gujanze Dozunru Lona Jura Namkatanyam Besimji Tamji Chetendo Tujala Name Bayan Doba Zoba Sanjije Gomba Rumboje Tobraja, Tichido Samba Sanju, Jinjodo, Simjibar Sartap, Simbar Tsar, Kang Hibraza, Tujirimba, Nambal, Yaru Wombo, Kamaba, Kuyen Chungwa, Sumba, Kejing, Trupudani. Jirang Jung Shabjin Zebe, Chachi Chamber. Manam Dini Chabar Chavala. Good afternoon, and again. So we are continuing from the last Saturday's discussion, and today's third section, and so before listening, as I mentioned last time, I wanted to all of you to give a rise to the supreme motivation of bodhicitta, which means that for the benefit of all sentient beings, and I'm going to listening to, reflect on, and meditate on teachings of genuine Dharma so that I can achieve enlightenment. So that is very important. Begin, as I mentioned last time, examining our intention for the benefit of all sentient beings. I am going to listen to this teaching. So the topic is a continuation from last time, Mahamudra Aspiration Prayer, which is composed by third Kamaba Rangjung Dorje, who is the both a scholar and realized, well-known scholar and realized master in not only in Kagyu tradition but also in every traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. So I have covered half part of the prayer in last two sections. So those last two sections are more on general teaching of Mahamudra. As you remember, we started with the precious human life, and devotion, and diligence, and guru, proper teaching, and so on. And then we went on with how important to listen to the teaching and contemplate on these, and so on. And I think here is more starting here, it's more detailed into actual practice, actual meditation. So if you look in page number 331 of Kajumalam book, and the second last line, and I'm going to first read the translation. Nothing indicates this, saying it is this. And nothing negates this, saying it is not. Beyond the intellect, Dharma is not composed. May we realize the perfect, ultimate truth. So this is the next stanza that we are going through. When it say, there's nothing that you can say, it is this, or it is not this. So sounds a little confused, but if you think carefully and also remind things that we have discussed last time. For example, when we talk about the ground, path, and variation. So in those things, we are always talking about inseparabilities. The inseparability of relative truth and ultimate truth, which is the ground. Inseparability of accumulation of merit, and accumulation of a path. Accumulation of the wisdom as a path, and then inseparability of two kayas, that is Dharmakaya and Sambhoga kaya. So particularly when you look into the ground that we talk, inseparability of convention truth and ultimate truth, that's inseparable. That is projection of our confusion mind. So then we said, what is the mind? Mind itself is also not exist, way it functions, not exist, way it appears. So here when it says, we cannot say that this is. So we are talking here, it's actually the Mahamudra, the nature, the mind that is clarity, luminous, and emptiness. So that is actually what the mind is. So although we describe in many different words like emptiness and appearance, inseparability of emptiness and appearances, or unarisen or unborn or unseen, also inseparability and union and so on. There are relative point of view, there are many words that we can use to describe the actual nature of our mind, but there is nothing that can really so there is no phenomena that can use as an example of the nature of mind that tells that Mahamudra, the nature of mind, is like this. So there's no phenomena that can compare with Mahamudra. So why? Because it's beyond the word, beyond expression, beyond examples. As I said earlier, although we can say luminous, clarity, emptiness, inseparability, and union, and all those words, they are basically words, but they cannot really describe. You know, for example, if let's say if you need to introduce a taste of candy to a blind, a deaf person, until he or she experienced the real taste, there is no way that you can introduce the taste of candy like this and like that. And similarly, the nature of mind, the recognition of true nature of our mind has to arise or has to understood or has to recognize by individual's experience. So that's why Buddha says, I cannot transfer my realization to you. And that's why he said, I cannot wash your negativities with my hand. This is something that we have to realize, we have to recognize by our own practice. Of course, based on proper instructions from the master, but then we have to, meditate by ourselves. Through that, we have to recognize and we have to understand. So, because of that reason, because of it is beyond, what do you call that word, the word they use? Beyond intellect, Dharma is not a composed. Dharmata. So Dharmata, uncomposed Dharmata is beyond intellect. Means the word, expression, examples. But only has to recognize, has to understand by our own practice. Likewise, we cannot also say that, it is not this. In any ways, you cannot really prove that this is not like that or like this. It's beyond, expression or negates. It's beyond both. So unfabricated or unelaborate, the nature of the mind or nature of Mahamudra is beyond those expressions. So, there is a sentence in Bodhisattvacharya Avatara by Shantideva, and he said there's two truths, ultimate truth and relative truth. And ultimate truth, the relative truth, this is something that we can conceive by our intellectual expressions in word and can introduce and explain. By the ultimate truth, the Dharmata, which is not composed, that is beyond our ordinary conception. So therefore, it is not something that can object with our intellect, mind. So, Lana Tenzin tani nipasho. Yes, may we realize the perfect truth. We have to understand intellectually that they are inseparable, luminous, clarity, beyond expressions, even beyond imaginable, Yet, we have to understand through the real truth. We have to understood from our inner experience, our practice. So that's why it says, may we realize. The realization, understanding and realization is two different things. So you can use these two different terminologies into two levels of the truth. Understanding is something that can achieve through word expression and examples and so on, but the realization is beyond that. Therefore, it can only understood or only realized through inner experiences. Just like the deaf person, when he or she eat the candy, nobody has to tell him or her anything. He or she will understood or realize the taste of candy momentarily. Before putting into his or her mouth, no matter how many times, no matter how many ways you try to introduce, it's impossible to get exactly what you mean. So the next one is, it's in page number 332. Nor realize this, we circle in the ocean of samsara. If this is realized, Buddha is not elsewhere. So we just explained what is the mind, what is nature of mind, what is the Mahamudra. So if we don't realize this Mahamudra, or the name doesn't really matter. You can call it Mahamudra, Madhyamika, Mahati. There are many different terminologies. But there are none of the word can describe exactly the meaning of either Mahamudra or Madhyamika or Dzogchen. So however, we just explained what is the nature of mind. So it says, if you realize this, if you don't nor realize this, realize through experience, we circle in ocean of samsara. So basically, until we realize this nature, we are going to circling in this samsara, where there are lots of suffering, lots of, negative karma as a result, lots of pain and suffering, circling, endless circle over and over and over. So that's why, when you look into 12 link of interdependent origination, so basically that is the circle of samsara, where it starts from the ignorance, and then from the first one is ignorance, and then formation and name and form, and then consciousness and so on. This is how the samsara forms, starting with the ignorance. So ignorance is the biggest obstacle or destruction to realize the true nature, the nature of mind, which is, beyond word, beyond examples, beyond expressions. So because of that ignorance, we are completely in the dark. If there is no light in a room, no windows, so then you are trying to get out in a huge dark room with no light, no windows. 15,000 square meter of dark room and you're trying to get out. No light, no phones, no window, you're trying to get out. Do you think when there's no signs, no exit signs or anything, you are going to circle in, okay, inside over and over and over. So when we don't realize the true nature of our mind, which is completely, blocked or covered by that ignorance, the samsara has no end. It's like a huge ocean, it's ocean. Always in the Buddhist teaching, the masters use ocean as the example of samsara. Ocean is so big, so vast, and so deep. It is so difficult to get out. Once you're drawn into the ocean, getting out is almost impossible. So samsara is just like that. But then the next sentence, it says, if this is realized, Buddha is nowhere else. If you realize your own true nature by your own practice, you practice that based on proper instructions and follow all the right instructions that you receive from your master. So then the Buddha is nowhere else, which means you're already enlightened. You don't have to go somewhere else to find a Buddha, because you yourself is already enlightened. So the reason why is when we say we enlightened, it's not something that we did not have before, and when you realize that true nature and you are gaining something, it's not like that, I think. We do have that basic, maybe it would be a wrong word to call a basic, the potential. Potential itself is already enlightened. It's enlightened, not only seed, but it well, accomplished, enlightened. That is already within us. But because of these obscurations, and we don't see it. Once we see, we realize, last time I was using the example of a diamond being underneath your basement. So when you learn that you have a diamond, you're already rich. So similarly, diamond of essence, of nature, of your mind, you're already enlightened. So if you realize enlightenment is nowhere else but right here. So which means every individual have the Buddha enlightened potential, enlightened seed. Once we manage to purify our ignorance that covers wisdom to see our true nature, we are enlightened. So the next word, it says, everything is this. There's nothing that is not this. Okay, everything is this. Everything is what? Everything is, if you realize your true nature, you are enlightened. If you do not realize your true nature, you are samsara and will continue in samsara until you realize this true nature. So everything is this. There is nothing that is not this, means there is nothing that is different from what is just explained. The realization of true nature is enlightened, not realization of true nature is the samsara. So there's nothing that is not what just said here. So therefore, the next word, may we know the dharmata, exposing the all bases. You know what is the all bases? Guishi, that is the mind. That is the nature of a mind, which is both source of samsara and enlightenment. So in order to achieve enlightenment, in order to free from suffering, in order to accomplish qualities, so we have to know this truth. So truth of dharmata. This is what we have to understand, recognize. So the next sentence is appearances are mind, emptiness is also mind. Realization is mind, delusion is our own mind too. Reason, it is mind. Stopped, it is also mind. May we sever all misconceptions in the mind. So again, it is still talking about the mind. So we said, what was the all bases? You know. So that is mind, that is the Buddha nature, that is the luminous, that is the clarity. So now, when we talk about the appearances and emptiness, so where are those appearances coming from? Appearances are coming from the mind. Because last time we said all those appearances, form, sound, smell, taste, and every form that are object of our five senses are nothing but projection of our mind. Projection of our confused mind. It's not a projection of our realized mind. It is a projection of our confused mind. Yet, the emptiness is also coming from the mind. So when it says emptiness is coming from mind, which means the mind itself is also emptiness. You know, that's why if you look in the Heart Sutra, Buddha says, form is emptiness, emptiness is a form. Form is not a different from emptiness, and emptiness is not a different from form. And then you use the same logic to the form. Sound, smell, taste, every phenomena. So here, and the same thing, appearances are mind, and emptiness is mind. So, therefore, you know, everything in this, what do you call this universe, let's say, form and emptiness, appearance and emptiness. We talk so much on this, how they are inseparable. what is the emptiness part, what is the appearances part. We already discussed with all those things. Because of appearances and emptiness, all not different from the mind, or not different from mental projections, the realization is also coming from the mind. Because when you realized, what you realize is the emptiness and appearances, the inseparable of emptiness and appearances, which is the luminous and the clarity, inseparability. So the realization, the realization is also the mind. Then of course the confusion or delusion is our own mind too. So basically everything is mind, all coming from mind. Appearances are coming from mind, emptiness is coming from mind. And realization is coming from mind, and likewise delusion is coming from mind. And then arising and stopped are coming from mind. Which means, everything, every phenomena has a beginning and end. You arise at the beginning, then stopped at the end. So when you're arising at the beginning is also coming from the mind, and ending at the end, stopping at the end is also coming from the mind. So because of that, now we have to analyze or examining on mind, nowhere else. Because everything else is coming from mind. So now you have to go directly to the mind. Try to understand from the bottom. Once you understand and once you realize there, then everywhere else, it's easy.